Hey, Clemson family, a lot of talk about realignment floating around out there. It's kind of a weird time, I think, to be hearing much about realignment with court cases out there. But I've got an angle that I think is not getting discussed a lot, and I think it may affect Clemson and a couple of other ACC schools the most as all this starts to happen.
I'm Daniel Shirley. We'll also talk about the special teams, but I can't wait to hear what this take is on realignment. We know how much I love realignment.
You do not love talking realignment, but I've mentioned this to you in text threads before. I'm Bill Zimmerman. This is the Supreme Alway podcast. We are well over 100 episodes now. We are into our position by position preview, the 10 items to know about each one for the 2024 season. We're also in the midst of our team by team opponent previews, 10 items to know about each of those, a little 10 for 24 kind of lists that we have going on in each case. YouTube.com/Clemson Kickoff. You can get caught up on those. The YouTube Music app also has those recent episodes, and hopefully I'm going to get them into Apple and Spotify. I know a bunch of you liked listening to us there as well. This is where we've had the biggest following, and just as I've had to prioritize time, this is where I've had to pay the most attention. So let's go ahead and get into this angle of realignment that I think is going to matter quite a bit. And to me, people are worrying about, oh, do we want to be in the SEC? Do we want to be in the Big Ten? What does Clemson want? Here's what matters, quite frankly. How badly does Fox Sports want to get into the South and onto the airwaves down here? Because the issue that's going to be forced, assuming that Clemson and Florida State and maybe a couple others are going to break away from the ACC in the coming years, is ESPN going to up its payouts and force those teams to say, hey, we're going to stay in the South, whether you go to the SEC, whether you stay in the ACC? Or is Fox Sports going to be willing to spend more to say, hey, we want some Southern teams in the Big Ten. We want to get on those viewerships. We want to get into those states. Cable systems still matter, and they're going to matter for a few years more. We can't just say it's all about streaming. So is ESPN really going to say, hey, move from the 40 million a year ACC to the 70 million a year SEC, and we'll pay you more to go there? Or are they going to say, hey, you know what, we're not interested, when we already have a good viewership in the South? Whereas Fox Sports, I think, may be more likely to say, hey, Big Ten, add a couple more $70 million teams because we want into those states.
Well, I think we all know, Bill, this is all driven by TV. And what is the next big step is going to be driven by TV. I believe Clemson wants to be in the Big Ten, at least the leadership. Now, fans, you find out.
Right.
Some want to be in the SEC, some want to be in the Big Ten, some want to stay in the ACC, whatever. And now, if you asked a poll, or if you did a poll on that, I think the ACC would probably be the last option. But I'm sure there's some people out there, if all things were equal, would say stay in the ACC.
Right.
If all things were equal, I would say stay in the ACC. But all things aren't equal, and we know that. And all things, I mean green, and I mean cash, and I mean money. It's not the same in the ACC. So, look, if Fox comes to the Big Ten and says, okay, you've got the West Coast, you've got the Northeast, you've got the Midwest, we know that, but now you've got to go get some in the Southeast. I don't think that there's any doubt that Clemson would be a target, probably North Carolina or Florida State or Virginia or whatever. But I think Clemson would be in that mix. I think Clemson's going to be fine either way whenever this all plays out. I don't think Clemson's going to get, quote, left behind in the ACC or quote, left behind wherever. But I think that if the Big 12 came calling and Fox said, hey, go add some teams, I think Clemson is a good fit. And I think Clemson's trying to position itself as a national brand, a national fit for moving into the Big Ten.
Yep, we will see, but I think not enough people are talking about the TV decisions behind the scenes that really are going to end up driving this. So find us on social media as these things unfold. And I don't think we're going to have a decision anytime soon, but we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram at Clemson Kickoff, we're on Facebook as well. You can find us there. So we've got about 5 minutes to run through 10 items on special teams. So this is going to be like super lightning round, but we're going to make it happen. And I don't think there's a lot definitive to talk about anyway with special teams at this point in the offseason. But first of all, to me, the biggest, well, maybe second biggest question, considering a lot of fair catches now, who's going to replace Will Shipley on those kick returns?
Wow. Is it Tyler Brown? Is it Antonio Williams? Is it Jay Haynes? I mean, those could be the names to keep an eye out for, but I would think it'd be one of those three guys, Bill.
Yeah, and I do think Dabo Sweeney historically likes having running backs back there. Green returned some kickoffs last year, but I think Haynes has a little more speed, so that would be interesting. I'd love to see him try to make things electric back there. Punt returns, I think it's going to be more of the same. Just whoever's got the shortest hands ought to be back there.
Catch the ball. Yeah. Catch the ball, call a fair catch, and let's start the offense from there. I don't think punt return is going to be much of a piece of a team's puzzle anymore as far as trying to score or having big plays, but catch the ball and be sure-handed, and you're like as your graphic says, and we'll move forward.
Yeah, and this offense, even despite all the problems on offense last year, one of the best teams at gaining first downs in the nation. So that rests your defense. Don't try to make a risky play in a big return. Put the ball in the hands of the offense. Punt coverage, not a lot to say here, but I do want to send props to Philip Florenzo, who was just such a freaking powerhouse out there last year. The long snapper. How many times did you see him the first guy down the field? Who's going to match that this year? Let's see some guys step up. This is a great recruiting class coming in, great recruiting class last year. Big chance for a player who's not a starter or in the two deep regular to make some inroads there. And Daniel, I'll have you talk about kick coverage there, because not every kickoff gets into the end zone, and it would be nice to see more consistency when they don't.
Yeah, we saw it in the bowl game, right? Kentucky opens the second half with a kickoff return for a touchdown. That just can't happen. Yeah. It just absolutely can't happen. Either kick it out of the end zone or make the tackle. But these long kickoff returns, which we've seen hurt Clemson the past couple of years, that's got to stop.
Yeah, I'd rather see one go out of bounds. At least it wasn't often that one didn't reach the end zone. Losing BT Potter wasn't all that costly. We know Robert Gunn III has a big leg. And let's get into Robert Gunn III. Item number 5. Can he bounce back? Can he take that starting field goal job that eluded him last year?
Well, I think he's going to have his hands full, trying to hold off the freshman, who I think we'll talk about in a minute. But I think Gunn will bounce back. I do. I think, this program talks a lot about building through adversity. And who had more adversity to start last year than Robert Gunn? If he's focused and ready, he's got the talent, he's got the leg, I think he can bounce back.
Yeah, he certainly does a nice job on kickoffs, and Aiden Swanson is capable too if he's needed. Mike Reed, this may take us a minute here. Kind of a shaky start to his tenure as a special teams coordinator, and I really would like to see that improve. I don't think that that's something, though, when you're asking Mike Reed to develop so many cornerbacks, and he does such a solid job. There's no one else in the country I want as Clemson's cornerback coach. But how can this staff kind of lift this whole special teams unit up together?
Well, I mean, I'd go sign another grad student off the street, I guess, to be the kicker like they did last year. No, they've got to be better on special teams, because that hurt this team. It hurt us. Yeah. Hurt the team against Duke. It hurt the team against Florida State. We know that. You win those 2 games if you're good in special teams, and it hurts you against Kentucky, even though they won that game. So, the Florida State game, even with everything that happened, you make that short kick at the end, you take the lead, and there's a good chance you win that game. It doesn't go to overtime. So you've got to be better in special teams.
Yeah, and I think that dovetails into, let me get your opinion on this, Daniel, but I think special teams are no longer like a third of the game as far as importance, and it seems to me to be a national trend.
Well, I think returns are no longer a third of the game. I think you're right about that. But I think coverage, and I think making kicks and punting the ball well still are a third part of a third of the game. But I think you're right. They've taken kind of legislated returns out of the game. We've seen the NFL take some steps with that, with the new kickoff rules. We'll see if college football does that as well.
Yep. You mentioned that freshman coming in, Nolan Hauser, a couple of field goals in the spring game. Let's see if he's ready to capture that field goal job this year.
Well, we know that when you have more talent, it pushes talent. And that between one of these 2 guys, you would think one of them is going to do the job and get the job done. And you don't have a situation like you had last year.
Yep. And that just kind of shows. I think there's questions for special teams everywhere but punter, I would say. Do you agree?
I do. Look, I think getting Swanson back is huge. I think it's a big piece of the puzzle. He has become a really good weapon. He wasn't that. We talk about guys growing through adversity. He did that. So we'll see if I think he's a big weapon for this team for sure.
All right. Until our next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.